I've been instructed to be succinct. You'll all be pleased to know that I have been pulled into line.
It was to myself as well.
Oh,
I
sure.
am
Sure,
just
Jan.
as bad.
Sure, Jan.
Well, let me grab my purse then.
Yeah, it's right. So it's Mrs. Jesus time. We have hopped off our pancake high horse and headed into the territory of needing a little bit of support, needing a bit of a lift, needing someone to give us a new perspective. And my God, did we get it?
Oh my
And
God.
not a moment too soon. Because I don't know how we would have gone through that 3 C's chapter without having been in Woodstock the days before.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think if we'd gone straight from Provincetown into all that was to unfold after Woodstock, I think this would not have been a good time. So
Yes.
we owe Linda and Man and the Epstein family
so much.
so much.
For the purpose of the Scarlet Map, Mrs. Jesus stretches from New York because she's hitching a ride away from New York. It's all about sort of escaping or getting away from something that is too big for you to deal with. And in this case, on the album, it follows directly on from I Can't See New York. And so here we are driving away from that with the aid of a Mrs. Jesus. And she drives all the way through New York State and across the top of Pennsylvania, through Cleveland, Detroit, a bit of Michigan, down to Indianapolis and up to Chicago where it stops. And so for us, it's very much Woodstock, our short jaunt into Canada, and then down through the 3 C's, Cleveland, Columbus and Chicago.
With a little wee pit stop in Buffalo, which is also on the Mrs. Jesus map, funnily enough.
That we will unpack in this episode.
Oh gosh, I don't know if we've got enough time to unpack the fullness of it, but we are going to.
We will talk about it.
Yeah, big time.
Hi, I'm Michael Earp.
And I'm Bailey Turner,
Welcome to Michael's Walk.
the podcast.
Michael's Walk is a road trip, a search for something. Spoilers, it's myself, and it was inside all along.
If only it were that simple.
Driven by Tori Amos's album, Scarlet's Walk, I'm recreating the journey Scarlet took in its 20th anniversary year.
I'll also be there,
With the loving and patient
always patient.
support of Bailey and Teague Lee, 3 trans queers set out across America
That's 33 states in 55 days.
to connect with the songs, the land that inspired them, and the fans inspired by the songs. We'll talk music, travel, healing, and hope as we ask the questions: how do I heal from 15 years of coercive control and manipulation?
And what role does the music we listen to play in our own relationship narratives?
We've self-produced this podcast and trip.
You can support us via GoFundMe.
For the full story, head to michaelerb.net.
So, we do want to talk first about what this song kind of means to us and how we connected with it.
Yeah. Because for me, this was one of the ones that I had never really associated much with my past relationship, like so many of the others on this album. And so in some ways, it's such a relief now to be making new connections and new revelations from it when I just am seeing the whole album in a new light. This one doesn't really feel like it's a hangover from before either. In fact, there's only really one line that stood out to speak on my relationship, and that was the bit about "You're walking on the water" bit, by far my favorite one, but now it seems we're drowning in a drop of water. And I was making parallels between drowning in alcohol and like even the Jesus turned water into wine, so now we're drowning in a drop of water. That's the links that I was making. So now that we're exploring it in more depth, it's great to be able to just really lean into what it means for me now without it necessarily hauling up a whole lot of history for me.
Of course.
So what does it mean now? Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, that's me. That's me asking me.
Spoiler alert, it's me.
It's me. So there's these bits in Scarlet's stories where Tori is talking about this track, and I wanted to read it to you because it really spoke to me when I was reassessing this song, and I think, yeah, it gave me something to aspire to. She says, in a strange time when the masks are down, she hooks up with Mrs. Jesus, and he is quite a, I guess you could say, a blast from the past. But she needed a ride, and he had one to offer, and he's very much, I guess you could say, one of those men that's probably more aware of women than a lot of women are, and gentle and fierce, and has a lot of qualities I think she would like to have in herself. Physically, he's not a woman, but he seems to be able to understand women, and he's in touch with certain things. Mrs. Jesus is in a pretty good space. He's able to shed some light on religious fanaticism, and he's able to shed some light on, you know, people using Christianity for their own means, what that looks like. It goes on, but really it's that discussion of gender and how he is a man who is exuding all of these wonderful feminine qualities, and Scarlet aspires to have them in herself, and I think I really do too. Like, I really want to be able to embrace my feminine qualities and recognize that life comes from the feminine. So it's fantastic to recognize that and lean into it and honor it.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, the notion that we're living in a society where we can be so derogative of women, and yet their essentialness
Yeah.
to life. Yeah, it's a baffling, very cruel component of some cultures.
But what does Mrs. Jesus mean for you?
Yeah, well, this song cuts right to the quick for me. You know, this is a song that I identify with super personally, because for a long friggin' time, my life looked very much like a Mrs. Jesus type life. I kind of had a reputation for being someone who kind of, you know, I call it kind of being a girl of the year. You know, I after a year, I always changed locations, I changed jobs, I found different friendship groups, and, you know, things just could only kind of last a period of time, and then they would kind of just quite naturally, from my perspective, they would change. And it all made sense to me at the time, and it also cost me a lot. I remember leaving a job. I was working at a university, and on my last day there was a woman who I didn't even think I got along with. I didn't think she liked me, but she was like in tears and telling me about how she'd been crying at home, and her child had asked her like why she was so unhappy, and she's like, oh, someone's leaving today who's really special to me. And, you know, I said, oh, you know, they're like Mary Poppins, you know, they just kind of come in and everything kind of changes, and they bring this great energy with them, and they bring different perspectives, and they're just so open and loving and smart, and they kind of kick you in the nuts, and, you know, and make things kind of change for the better, and then suddenly they're gone. And I'd had multiple remarks like that, leaving jobs, leaving different communities, leaving different towns. And so I think I took on that kind of moniker of a Mary Poppins moment you took it very seriously. And I don't know if you've seen The Sound of Music. For those of you who haven't, at the end of kind of Act 1, there's this moment that I find myself watching.
Mary Poppins or Sound of Music?
Sound of Music.
Okay, yeah.
Different Julie Andrews film.
Yeah, I just had a moment.
There's this moment that I remember being kind of haunted by, and it was my favourite moment in the film from being a kid. And it's almost, I would say, it's a core part of my psyche. This moment where they're at the party and Maria's told to change and come to the party, and then the Baroness kind of indicates that she might be getting too attached, and this setting might be too attached to her. And so she leaves, and it's this sort of, the music crescendo and the party's happening in this room and she's kind of scurrying out into the night. And that's happened to me a lot. There's a lot of very similar circumstances where I've suddenly just kind of disappeared, or suddenly I'll be letting people know, oh, I'm moving to this place in 6 weeks. And, you know, the relationships that I've forged sometimes get lost and sometimes they don't. Anyway, I was told to be succinct, but the thing is, over time I've had the positive, you know, people like, oh, you know, she's so wonderful and she brings this incredible thing into our lives, and then she goes. And I remember there was one person who kind of called me ephemeral, you know, and kind of said, well, you don't really last, do you? Like, you're kind of not. It's kind of like, just enjoy you while you're around, because you're very clearly never sticking at anything and you're never going to be somewhere for very long. And,
Yeah.
and so there's a heartbreaking side of it as well, where you live very vastly, but not necessarily very deeply. It's that kind of chocolat lifestyle, you know, the always nomadic and always kind of following, you know, whatever way the wind kind of calls you. And I'm kind of in a place in my life now where I am trying really hard to change that, because I want roots and relationships, and, you know, and there's this great line in the song. There's a few great lines that I love, but one of them is, I've been cruising a good invention, but in some ways I don't think it gets any easier. And there is that, you know, I've done multiple different moves over different times, and in some ways I don't think it gets any easier, and trying to recover from the losses that I experience still feel hard. So yeah, so that's pretty much what the song really means to me. It kind of speaks to that notion of being someone who people can count on to kind of come into your life and be part of it when it's time for it to go through some mass change. I've been really fortunate and blessed to come into different people's lives at a time where they really need someone who shows them what I have somehow in my heart to show them.
Well, I mean, that's kind of how it worked for me with you. I just was lucky enough to get you back.
Yes. And like, it makes such a big... There are people like yourself, like Phoenix, like Tani, and like Tams, you know, people who figure it out, but it's not easy. It's not easy to stay in my life, I think. You know, it's work. It's work to stay on top of what it is that I'm doing and where I'm going, and I've seen people become exhausted by friendship with me. So
you have this delightful way of dropping information that's like 3/4 of the way down the track.
Yeah.
And you'll be like, oh, and like, I first heard about Ulysses when you were printing it. And you mentioned it in a way as if we'd talked about it very regularly.
Multiple times, yeah.
It's like, I'm just printing my Ulysses.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you what?
What is that?
What?
Yeah. It's a thing. Look, I'm sure that you and Phoenix and Tams can all form some sort of club where you're like, what the fuck is she up to now? What is she doing? Because she's mentioned these like little snippets that you can't really ever fully piece together, and suddenly this whole thing is happening that you've got no... Anyway. Yeah. That's me.
Bless.
Yeah. Another great line in the song that I love is at the end where she says, you know, if you're my way, let me love you, Mrs. Jesus. And it is that thing of, you know, there's not a lot of time to be loved in a life like the one I've been carrying on with for the last 30 years. You know, even coming on this trip was like, this is another time where I'm just putting off, you know, what life could be. And I'm like, that's not me saying that I'm not thrilled to be here. It's very much like a more time of unsettling, you know.
No, it's more that I'm thrilled you're here, because I thought this was pie in the sky, and then you'd flit off to something else before it actually happened.
Well, that is kind of how we had talked about this years ago, and then I moved to New Zealand, and then I moved to England, and the chances of me jumping on it were slimmer and slimmer. So yes, it all worked out perfectly.
It did.
But you know, there is that phase of your life where there are people who want to love you, but they can't because you're slippery, you know,
Yes.
and you're difficult to pin down, and you know, it's not that I'm a non-committal person. It's that I'm so willing to go wherever the wind takes me, and I have to kind of grow up in a sense and be willing to say no to incredible opportunities or possibilities in order to have what I ultimately want more, which is
stability and roots.
Well, I think I'm not too proud or afraid to admit that, like, love.
Oh yeah.
I want that. At some point in the future, I want to be able, and I imagine that the right relationship for me is someone who can take some of those adventures with me and who has adventures for me to join with them. But ultimately, I do want a sense of stillness and deepness that the Mrs. Jesus lifestyle doesn't afford. So that was a big one there.
But Mrs. Jesus as a character, one of the things I like it is when she says in the Scarlet's stories that it is a Mrs. Jesus. I like that she is pointing out that this is just an archetype character, and any of us can don the moniker for as long as we need.
Yes.
Or
absolutely.
There's lots of positive things about being available to help other people. But you also need to be checking in with yourself.
Absolutely. And the other sort of thing that we were talking about with this song, you mentioned that it was about leaving New York.
Yeah.
And the absolute devastation that left in its wake. And something that brought up for me, this song is so deeply attached to Stefan Svensson, who's a member of the sort of Tory community. No idea if they're listening, but Mrs. Jesus is Stefan's #1 Tory song. And when I asked them about it, we talked about how the line that really gets them is "There's something every day," and it's like lifelines and suicide crimes. There's something every day, and that really made me think about the situation in LA where I was amongst another group of people ear-witness to a suicide while we were there. And it's kind of that moment of realizing that there's always going to be something. So you kind of have to take the donuts, to quote Amanda Palmer, you got to take the wins where you get them, and if there's someone who can support you, freaking take it. This is
take the money and run.
Yeah, yes.
We listened to one of Amanda Palmer's very early live recordings of a breakfast summit between her and a number of other female musicians about signing with a major label. Including Tori Amos.
And she kind of, this fantasy she had about what these other sort of female artists in the game would sort of advise.
I'll put the link to the YouTube video in the show notes.
So, with all of that being understood, let's talk about our Mrs. Jesus trek and all that unfolded. So, we got into Woodstock on a very incredible, opportune, serendipitous night.
Yes. I think we might have mentioned this on a previous episode, but basically the stars aligned for the night that we were staying with my agent, Linda Epstein, to be the exact night that she was launching her debut middle grade novel at a local bookshop.
Repairing the World,
which I've bought a copy of now and I can't wait to read. But the fact that we walked into this enormous celebration was so wonderful. Like, there was an enormous food spread when we walked in, catering for everyone's tastes and dietary requirements.
Bagels the size of your head.
Bagels the size of your head. I don't think I've ever seen bagels that big before.
They were massive. Or they were also lox, which was delicious. It was just amazing to be. We've stayed with some people, but this was the first time we were with a family. Like a massive collection of Jewish people eating and celebrating and lifting each other up and laughing. And I think that first night we just kind of sat in a corner on the couch and just kind of watched it like, what the fuck is this? Like, we've been so out of it.
It was so wonderful to witness, though.
It was so
and
wonderful.
The way the different generations just talked with each other so readily and freely. It was really heartwarming on so many levels. And we got to meet Nan, Linda's new girlfriend. And that was very lovely and exciting. Nan's a delight.
There's such a, I mean, Nan's about to publish an incredible story, actually. I can't wait to, we'll make sure we share her links, because Nan has this incredible story to tell about finding love at 60. And I think their story is just friggin' incredible. I know that that story is being released at some point soon, and would love to share it.
Yes. And so then we had the book launch, which was wonderful, and we got to chat with other people in Linda's book world, but I also got to touch base with a couple of people that I had met 4 years ago when I went to the Highlights Foundation writers workshop that I did. And yeah, Alexandra was there, and Alison Myers-Green, who basically runs the Highlights Foundation workshops, organises a lot of them, and I was able to pick up a copy of her debut middle grade novel as well, which I'm very excited to read and absolutely had to buy as soon as it was described as being about an autistic person with a love of eagles. And I'm like, oh, sounds like someone I know.
Yes. You're dating that person.
Yeah, yes. So I'm very much looking forward to reading that one too.
We were thoroughly charmed by Woodstock in general. I think, if people were to sort of... I got asked what my favourite state on the walk was, and I think we'll do this at the end. We'll do like a bit of a... We can do some fun, like, highlights, lowlights, best accommodation, worst, best experience.
Yeah, that'll be great.
We'll do a bit of like a, one of those, but I think Woodstock is very much, is the current leader for best place that we've visited. Just so sweet and charming, great little new age shops. It just felt like being back in the noughties, to be honest. Like,
tie-dye everything. Anything that stands still for too long, it'll get tie-dyed.
Yeah. And then, like, some of the funkiest little cafes, and the nature was beautiful. And I wound up having...
Sorry, I just want to say, but ironically, the first place that we didn't feel inundated with passive marijuana smoke.
Yeah, who'd have thunk it? Town full of hippies and not a single whiff of ganja.
Yeah.
Good for you. Good for you, Woodstock. You kicked the green. And the only other sort of thing that was special about Woodstock was a very serendipitous situation where we were driving, and Michael noticed that they had a production of Beauty and the Beast on at the Woodstock Playhouse, which I ended up taking Mr. Connecticut along to see, and we had a really nice night, and it was great just to sort of seeing Beauty and the Beast on stage is something that I just love to do, for all that I am very particular about, the quality of the production.
And therefore left halfway through.
Hey! Yes, I did. I do leave halfway through a Beauty and the Beast production if I don't feel like I'm enjoying it, because I don't want to subject myself to that. But yeah, so we had a really lovely time in Woodstock, and then headed...
We drove from there. It was an epic drive.
'Twas
like a 12-hour day. We thought it would be like a, I don't know, 5 or 7 hour drive.
7 or so?
And it turned out to be a 12-hour day driving to get to Toronto, which meant that the incredible Michael Gillies, who was one of the first people to jump on board and offer accommodation, and so we were going to Toronto. It's not on the map, it's not part of America, but we made it part of this trip because we felt it was important to do so.
It was just such an exciting opportunity to meet someone brand new and to see a part of the world that neither of us had ever seen, and have this great experience. I mean, actually, on the way up there, we went past Red Hook, and I got to meet Robert Flint, who's an incredible photographer who took photos of me, the last person to photograph me before I transitioned. And we did nude erotics, and that was incredible to see someone who'd been recording queer, particularly gay male erotic culture for a very long time. So we were charged with this incredible energy, but the drive kind of sent us a bit gaga. It
destroyed us. So once we crossed the border into Canada,
which in itself took a long time.
Took such a long time to even get across. But once we got there, it should have been an hour's drive,
45 minutes, I think, is the distance.
but it took 2.5 hours.
Hell on earth, the traffic.
And by this time, we had already spent, 10 hours on the road. And so we went a little
nuts.
We were saying the most ridiculous things to each other and laughing
Giggling
our
like-
heads off.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what was going on. And it also meant that what was supposed to be the entire afternoon with Michael, seeing his Toronto, being shown around his city, turned out to be us arriving at 8 p.m. for this incredible Scarlet's Walk prefix dinner where he had hand-chosen every single ingredient so it tied in to the theme of Scarlet's Walk in
And
some...
different tracks.
Yeah.
There was like your cloud, whipped potato, kind of in the... I can't... We will put a picture up of the menu. We've been saving it until this episode got released, so you can see what was actually prepared for us. And the food was bamboozlingly good.
So tasty. And all local ingredients, with the exception of the honey. He couldn't find local honey, and so he used honey that had been bought in Greece, and was like, we can tie this in because it's like Apollo's frock.
That's right.
And I'm just like, every single detail had been thought, and
we were just dead. And it was so overwhelming that we'd not sort of experienced generosity quite like it. And Michael and his partner Jamie was so sweet, and had also gone out of their way to organise separate special accommodation for us. We've been so blessed by the people who've come across on this tour. But I know that both Michael and I have, I wouldn't say regrets, but the state of mind we were in at this point was...
I definitely had regrets. I have regrets.
Oh, yeah, sure. If I could do it over, if I could do one night over, if I could do one 24-hour period over in this whole tour, it is that 24-hour period between arriving in Canada and arriving in Cleveland.
Oh my goodness.
The things I would do to change that day. But, the reality was both of us had kind of gotten very caught up in stuff going on back home, stuff going on in other parts of the country. We'd met so many incredible people who were pulling our attention in a bunch of different directions. On top of that, we were dealing with, we were still kind of on the run from the kind of shitty sexual politic of Provincetown, and so a lot of things were pulling our attention away from being fully present in this incredible experience that had been...
Grindr.
Oh, look, yes.
Among other things, but yes.
You were messaging some people back home. I was messaging some people in Seattle and a few humans who we'd met along the way who wanted to chat, including Connecticut. Mr. Connecticut was trying to keep hold of me, and we were pulled in a billion different directions, and our brains were just
fried.
Cracked.
But that's no excuse.
Absolutely not.
We were not the greatest of house guests, and in the moment we certainly didn't show the respect that meal deserved.
Oh gosh, we didn't even basic respect. Never mind how good the meal was. Could have cooked us chicken schnitties, and we hadn't done a good enough job of being fully present. And we can we
have to
apologize
own that
openly to
yes.
Mike. But it was a turning point for us because and it will stand out as an important piece of the trip because it was rock bottom. I think we were both very conscious of our behavior as well. That's what the next day we talked about it a lot. And we're like, I don't know what was happening.
Yeah.
We both knew we were being rude. We both knew that we didn't need to be doing what we were doing, but we just couldn't snap out of it by that point. And we were gutted for ourselves because at the end of the day we're the ones who missed out. We're the ones who didn't get the experience, and it's just one of those things where we won't crap on about it too much because it made us realize that we hadn't really been very awake. We hadn't been very present in general. This kind of all these coulds and shoulds and expectations and desires were destroying the trip that was right in our very hands.
Yeah. We've spent all this time and money to get here and do this thing, and to be that distracted that we couldn't even sit and have a proper in-depth conversation about Scarlet with someone who is so passionate about it that they cooked the best freaking meal ever just for us.
Yeah. It was friggin' heaven. I mean...
We
yeah.
will repay you, Michael.
But yeah, then we'll find a way. But if you're going to Toronto, stay with Michael Gillies. that is someone whose good books you want to get into, because dang,
He is just fantastic.
fucking delight. We have so much love and appreciation for you, Michael. Thank you so much for everything. And sent us off with goodies in the morning.
Yeah,
as
gave
well.
us like
Took us
a
out
goodie
for,
bag.
Took us out for drinks in the neighborhood, and then gave us some. Actually, we've got the maple candies here now.
We're down to our last 3 maple candies.
Our last 3 maple candies.
These are the same maple candies that Michael Gillies gave a packet to Tori at the show, one of the shows he went to, and Tori gave a shout out on stage. Thanks for the maple candies, and can report they are freaking delicious.
Are so yum.
So,
as for the maple biscuits, they were a lifesaver.
oh,
as well.
the maple cream cookies, just heaven. And he even gave me a little jar of milk for my tea.
Yes, which we still have.
Yes. Well, not the milk.
Forever. Well, not the milk. So, look, we left Toronto feeling a bit sheepish and headed down to Niagara Falls, which was incredible and powerful. And we really thought that maybe that will have been the worst of it. You know, we've...
Well, let's turn this ship around, we said.
Literally.
And then we got in the car and drove away from Niagara Falls.
Thinking that we had...
some sort of stick or something flapping in the mud flap.
However...
Rattle, 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 rattle.
This girl had left the keys on top of the car, and they're like remote control keys. And as we drove over a bridge, we heard them slide off, and we still didn't know what they were, and we still cannot explain why we didn't just pull over. That's something that we would ordinarily do.
But there was nowhere to pull over.
But like we might have made it happen, or like walked back. Like instead of going, well, let's just get to Buffalo. Like was in a hurry and just wasn't thinking. And like it's something that I've done before. We had something like rattling around in the boot another time, and I pulled over straight away. Like it's completely outside of my usual behaviour not to pull over. But by the time I got to Buffalo and got out of the car, I asked Michael if they had the key, and then it became abundantly clear that there was no key near the car. And we were suddenly stranded in Buffalo waiting to meet a really good friend of mine, Gideon. So we set about trying to fix that, and things went from bad to worse.
To so much worse. I thought, it's fine. It's fine. We've lost the key. We're stuck here. I'll just call the car rental place, get it sorted, and we'll just get on with things.
And we had someone waiting for us in Cleveland, Ohio. Like someone was going to take us out for dinner and this beautiful night experience. We're like, we can do with this. Let's just get a new key, or let's
David was going to give us a driving tour of Cleveland and then take us out for dinner. And we were so looking forward to that.
Yeah.
But then this schmozzle happened, and I was like, right, we'll just fix it and move on. And so I Googled the customer service number. There it was. I dialed it and followed all of the instructions. And only 3 hours down the line did I realize that I had given $900 US to a scam artist because I had not dialed the correct customer service number.
Yeah.
I felt so ashamed. I felt foolish and ridiculous. I couldn't believe that I'd been taken in by it. Even as it was happening, I was saying to the supposed customer service person, this is a ridiculous system. I cannot believe that a business would function like this. But the state of mind we were in, all of the things that he was saying, that we'd get a partial rebate, like $200 cash back when we returned the car, this, that, and the other. Like, it was all getting sorted, apparently. Someone was on their way to us. But then it turned out that, no, it was all a scam, and I had been done in again. And I went through this moment of desperately not wanting anyone to find out. And that really made me feel exactly as I had in my relationship with my ex, when I would find out something about him, or when he was arrested and I was ashamed on his behalf, and I was ashamed that I was with him despite this, and I couldn't bear the thought of anyone finding out that I had been so foolish. And that's exactly...
Judging you, being so afraid of judgment.
Yeah, and so that's what happened that day. I just completely lost sight of what was like the right thing, and made terrible decisions, and just followed through blindly on what I thought was the customer service to help us, because I was so desperate to just keep this thing going that I was like, well, fine, I'll just do whatever has to be done. And if this is their ridiculous outcome, like ridiculous process, then I just have to do it in order to get this fixed. And then when I finally clicked that everything was wrong and I had been scammed, it's because they were no longer answering their phone, and all of a sudden I'm like, why would they not answer their phone?
It's a customer service number, yeah.
And then I tried Googling it again, and even the Google listing had disappeared. So I don't know how they turned that around so quickly, but basically that I just had to say, well, that there's that $900 US just for Americans.
It's
Basically,
a lot of money in America. But
yeah, it is a lot of money in America, but for us, that's at least $1,400 Australian, at least, if not more so.
That's a lot of money that we could have been. We needed.
We needed. That was supposed to see us through to the end, and then, so I finally went to the correct website, and I made sure I was dialing the number from the website, not from a Google search, which has been my problem in the past. I need to stop just Googling for numbers. I need to search for their website. That's my advice for Virginia. No, it's not. Anyway.
Part of the advice,
So then, when I get in touch with the actual car rental place, they were very matter of fact, and they're like, yes, this has happened, this happens, but these are the costs involved. And it was like about $400 for the replacement of the key, and then we had to get the car towed, and the towing was another $200 to $300 US for that we had to pay for as well. So in the end, that mistake that led to a mistake that led to a mistake just robbed us of about $1,600 US.
It's nearly $2.5 grand Australian.
And just absolutely took the wind out of our sails.
Yeah, because we'd been waiting for so long, we were stuck in Buffalo for 5 hours, so we weren't going to be able to see David at all, which was super disappointing.
We didn't end up getting to Cleveland until 9:30 or something.
Like that. I was due to have lunch with a very dear friend, and that kind of became a bit of an awkward situation where we couldn't really leave the car, and so we didn't really know what was going on. And because of that, that also meant that it was so embarrassing. A, that the whole thing started with my mistake, but B, just listening to the process, and we were like, that's weird. It's weird that that's what they want us to do, and like, just you look back on it and you go, why did nothing in my brain twig that this was bullshit? And it's also a reminder that this happens to everyone. It can happen to anyone. And you it's so easy for you to listen to other people's experiences and go, oh my god, how embarrassing, I never would have done that or that or that. But when you're in the moment, you have no way of kind of describing, all it takes is for you to think that you've done one thing correctly, and the rest just kind of all becomes as read.
I genuinely thought that I dialed the right number. And
so did I. That's why I went, well, the whole thing, you'll have called the number on the thing, and so if this is what they say you've got to do, and this is what it is. And I didn't know that you'd Googled the number. So anyway, and I didn't think that, it's just one of those things where you can't judge people for being scammed. These scams work that way. And another reason why I think we got taken in by it was that, I'm going to tell you this straight out, so everyone who's listening, car rental company processes are shit. Even like the amount of fuckery we've dealt with in the face,
hidden fees, changing of restrictions at every step. Like we rented cars from the same company at 3 different times, and on the third occasion they say we need a second credit card for the second driver.
And you need to,
and it's like just things like this where it's like every office seems to have their own rules, and you either have to accept what they're telling you or not get a car, which is not really an option when you're doing a trip around America.
So it didn't actually seem that outlandish that Avis would ask for these cooked, weird car. Anyway, it was all just bizarre, and it meant that we rolled into Cleveland into some pretty shitty accommodation.
But I also really feel that I needed to talk about that on this podcast and confess my own foolishness on whatever level, but mainly because as soon as I realized what had happened, I did have all of that trauma response to it. Because like, if you change customer service to relationship, like, it's so easy to see how easy someone is. Like, it's so easy to be taken in by someone who does not mean you well. And that it just brought back so much of what I'd been through, and all of these, yes, I'm here to help you, we'll do the best that we can, we still have to do this, that, and the other, but like, ultimately we're trying to help you get back on the road and get on your way. And I just, part of me is like, look, fantastic experience to write about for the book, but my God, I could have done without it.
Yeah.
But hey, same could be said about my ex. So.
Yeah. But what kind of happened then was pretty amazing. And so what we decided to do before we went to bed, because we had kind of posted that we're in a bit of a sticky situation.
I think I used the term dumpster fire.
Yes, you did. And we jumped on live on Instagram, and we kind of gave people a few more details, and we put out a bit of a call, and by the time we woke up in the morning, we had recouped a great deal of the money. And
about 80% of the money we lost
everyone
had come back in
and helped us out. And the incredible Ryan Crawford said it best, that even Scarlett stubs her toes sometimes. And my God, that phrase has probably saved our sanity in a lot of ways, because it gave us a window to believe that this was all in service to the larger project, and gives us an ability to let people know, if they're listening to this, that feeling foolish is so much, at the end of the day, it's not our fault that happened. We were taken advantage of. People were primed, ready for our exact situation where we were stressed and in a hurry and, not really thinking.
In fact, they'd set the trap.
Exactly. And, we unfathomably great. It kind of continued that journey of. It also made us realize how grateful we were to people like Michael and Linda, and now to these dozens of people who really saved our ass and saved the trip. And this next 2 weeks are really in dedication to all of those humans who pitched in for us or even shared the post, just helped us out, because we'd be in some friggin' dire straits without all of you. And so thank you all so much for leaping in and being our Mrs. Jesus.
You really were.
You found us in a state, that's for damn sure.
And so, did we grab your purse? Is that what happened?
I think that is what happened. Yeah, we grabbed your purse. Although we laughed about it because by the time the tow truck took the car, and it's like I found it to be a pretty spunky tow truck driver who kind of went, well, now this is what's happening. We're not taking you to the airport. We're taking you to this thing, and we just were so ruined by this time that he was like, well, you have to get into the tow truck for how you drive it, and we're in this truck with this guy, and I'm just pissing myself laughing. It was the most ridiculous thing that I think has ever happened in a long, long time, and it really was like, well, I'll grab my purse and I'm hitching a ride with this Mrs. Jesus tow truck driver who he really was quite charming and shared his story with us and made us feel better about the situation that we were in. He was like, well, you didn't crash the car, and that's mostly what I pick up. And I think we did kind of have a real Mrs. Jesus experience with him.
Yeah. He told us another story about some guy who lost his rental car keys because he gave them to his 3-year-old, who then went into a ball pit.
And left them in there.
So...
we were like, well, you know what? We're doing okay.
I would have spent more time looking in that ball pit.
Oh, I was ready to get in an Uber back to that bridge and go friggin' dodging cars and trying to find those keys. And anyway.
You would have been arrested.
I would have.
And that would have added another shade to the story that we didn't need.
Indeed, we didn't. So, it's safe to say that our Mrs. Jesus time was pretty spectacular in all the wrong ways, but in there were some incredible lights, and we kind of went from strength to strength after Cleveland. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we headed down to Columbus and spent some wonderful time with Ryan, including...
You forgot. Before leaving Cleveland, we stopped in at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and voted for Tori.
We did. I had forgotten. What a hoot that was. We did vote for Tori Amos. She's sitting at 83.
83.
So if you are inclined, get on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame website and vote for Tori Amos, because sometime soon she's got to be inducted.
Yeah.
Like, the things she has done for the music industry.
And look, the fact that Weird Al Yankovic was at number 12 or something just makes me a bit ill.
Agreed. I cannot accept that.
Who was at number 1? Motley Crue.
Motley Crue.
Yeah.
But Kate Bush was second, and we're happy about that.
Yeah, Kate Bush can be inducted and should have been before now.
But yeah, so I went with Ryan and went to possibly the most incredible...
It was the best bookshop. Well, not the best, because I work at the best bookshop. My bookshop is the best. But it was the most mind-blowing bookshop I've been in. And I mean, I've been in the Strand too, and everyone talks that up as being the pinnacle, but there was something magical about the book loft in the German Village. It was a rabbit warren, a maze, where every wall and surface and floor-to-ceiling books and, 38 rooms?
30, or something like that.
36 rooms of books, and there are multiple levels with half ups and downs and around corners, and it was both mind-blowing in how awesome it was, but also as someone who manages a bookshop, I was like, what do they do for staffing here? I'm so overwhelmed with what it would take to manage this place. Oh my goodness.
Wild. And it was even, you couldn't work out when you walked into a room how to get out of it. It was, you really had to hunt. It was like the labyrinth. You had to hunt for, and then suddenly you'd be in a dead end and you have to work your way back, and then you'd go, Wait, how
I
do
mean,
get
there
out of
is a
here?
map.
Can't.
If you wanted to do it that way, you could follow the map, and every room is numbered, and so you can, you can look at the list and know which section you want to see. So you go searching for that numbered room. So
It was so much fun to be in.
oh,
It was so cool, just kind of walk around this sort of, you just, and even in this modern day and age where, everyone tells you the book is dead and you see a shop like this, it was like, nah, this is amazing. Long live the book loft, in my opinion.
I got to see some Aussie books on the shelf.
We did.
We saw Nev Ozizen's The Pronoun
Lowdown.
Lowdown. We got to see Gary Lonsborough's American rendition of The Boy from the Mish, which is called Ready When You Are here in the States.
It was very cool to see that.
I recommend everyone going out and reading that. It's such a delightful read.
I also had a very interesting experience, a very Mrs. Jesus type experience in Columbus, where I had jumped on Grindr again. I hadn't quite kicked the habit by Columbus and had found this human, and we struck up a chat, and it became abundantly clear very quickly that they were in a really not great headspace. Were having a lot of problems in their relationship, a lot of problems in their households, problems with their health and with their mental health. And I just went, I have the ability to kind of support someone here, and we just ended up talking all day. We were going to catch up, but it didn't quite work out that way, just to kind of have a drink and connect. But we've become really good friends. I think that kind of leads into what this song is about, which is it's actually not that difficult to be there for someone if you're willing to just be there and you don't need to help. You don't have to help. You can just accompany someone through the period of their pain for a bit. And that was kind of what was done for us over the course of the next little while. Ryan, there wasn't anything that, could be done, but we just needed someone to kind of be okay with where we were at and kind of go, look, I can see that you're in, pretty bad shape and you're not feeling your best right now, but let's go get some tacos and some ice cream and hang out. And he ended up, at the end of our time together, gave us both these beautiful postcards and some little presents just to kind of, and it really did, Ryan was a Mrs. Jesus for us as well. Just really lifted our spirits in that moment. And
you were so wonderful, Ryan. Thank you for showing us Columbus, your Columbus.
Yes.
Taking us to a few great spots. And I want you to know that the Scarlet charm that you gave me, he gave me the candy charm from the Scarlet Special Edition, which was so moving because I got the stiletto when I got my Scarlet's Walk Special Edition, and somewhere along the line I lost it. And so to be gifted that kind of collectible, which is, really, really rare these days.
They're not around. They're not. They're not the kind of.
Believe me, I've bought about 4 edition. I've bought off eBay the Scarlet's Walk Special Edition about 3 times now, and none of them have come with the charm, because the charm is just too easy to lose. And so, Ryan, I just want you to know that I have attached it to my earring, my sleeper, and so now I've got this little dangly scarlet candy hanging from my ear, and it's going to accompany me for the rest of the trip and forever, and I love it.
So, advice for Virginia. After all that we went through and after everything, what advice do we have for Virginia?
Well, don't Google numbers.
Yeah.
Go to websites.
Call the official number, and do not supply anyone with card details unless you have confirmations. And if anything feels at any point suspicious or bizarre when you're dealing with customer service,
Because the other thing is, as the car rental place pointed out, none of this would have been charged up front. Everything is charged at the end when they have a final figure. So there's no need to be taking credit card numbers over the phone. Not that they took my credit card number. I wasn't scammed in that way. It was a very convoluted... Anyway, I don't want to... That's another thing. Yeah. Anyway, that's advice that has come from talking about it again this time. But the advice that I wrote down while we were planning this is open yourself to possibilities, because you could be someone's Mrs. Jesus, or someone could be a Mrs. Jesus to you, and you don't know if you're not open for just new people in your life in some way, shape, or form. Sometimes I meet people and they just give off this energy that they don't need any more people in their lives, and perhaps they don't. Maybe you don't, but by giving off that energy, I think you're shutting down so much potential. And then the other little bit of advice that I reflect on personally with this song is for the masks out there in the world, the males, the people who identify as masculine on any level, or
whose masculinity
is important to their sense of self, to embrace the feminine on some level. Like, I'm not saying everyone needs to be camp, or everyone needs to be femme, but
being feminine has nothing to do with wearing fucking nail polish. It's about being empathetic and compassionate and caring and nurturing. They're qualities that we have ascribed to femininity, but they are valuable for everyone.
That's what I'm getting at. Like, just embrace all the parts of yourself. Don't shut down something because you think it's not for your gender.
Yeah, you think it is gonna harm your masculinity.
Yeah.
And we had this statement the other day, if your masculinity needs to be named,
oh yeah,
it ain't solid enough.
Yeah, when people self-described masks, I'm sorry, I'm not on board.
Instant block, because what that tells me is that you're not masculine, because a person who is secure in their masculinity and their femininity doesn't need to spell it out or urge people that it's there.
Yeah.
It's just there.
Yeah. It's not that I don't like masculinity, it's that it doesn't need to be named, especially by the person themselves.
And it only identifies you as someone who is insecure about
or
yours
chauvinistic.
Or others' people. Yeah, well, exactly.
How about you?
My advice to Virginia is to let love in, and you have to keep kind of living your life while you recover from any trauma or any kind of heartache. I wrote down a note to myself to mention Alice Hughes, who was my first and only girlfriend when I was 14, 15. And Alice and I kind of fell for each other because I was so supportive of her relationships. And I kind of got into this state of mind, even at that age, where I was like, it's a better thing for me not to be in the relationship, but to give her the advice. Yeah, in the way that I support her to have a relationship, I can manage my own emotions better if I cut my own investment. I had a big crush on her, but I was like, well, I'm going to cut that off. I'm going to, cut my feelings off for her and invest those in her other relationship. And I've been in situations now where when I have a crush on someone and they're like, I don't feel like that way about you, or they'll come to me and go, I have feelings for this person. I have this sort of peaceful, this is good. This is good for you. Turn off your feelings and you invest in their relationship. Invest in the crushes they have and support them to get what they want. There's this kind of weird self-sacrificial kind of martyr moment that you have where you almost feel this tortured joy at walking away from something that would make you happy. It's hard to explain. Watch the end of Act 1 of Sound of Music, and that'll tell you. It's all there. Or watch kind of the end of Mary Poppins. It's all there. When she's leaving. So it was like, let love in, and don't let, and take your own advice about love.
Yeah.
Don't just kind of take your own advice about life. Don't just kind of be someone who gives out great advice and forgets to live.
Yeah, absolutely. How about songs? Shall we? What songs came to mind with Mrs. Jesus?
The first one was Gypsy by Fleetwood Mac. It's a song about people who are on the run and there's something going on, and it's that, you know, you see a gypsy and you fall in love, and there's an idea about someone, and there are, I mean, you know, if you know the story of Gypsy, it's actually, a lot of it is about one of Stevie Nicks' precious friends who died and had a husband and a child, and in order to kind of support Stevie, actually married her friend's husband, and they raised the child together for a brief period before they got divorced. Or I think maybe they got engaged and their engagement got called off, but she sort of sings about, you know, if love were enough, and if the child was enough for me to love, enough to love. And then, you know, that's kind of, she is dancing away from you now. You know, it just, you can't kind of keep hold of these things. Yeah. And so Gypsy's a great song. I also put down Ride by Lana Del Rey. I have a lyric of it tattooed on my collarbone. I just ride. It's just such a beautiful song about ephemerality and the cost it can have on the person's spirit. And for some reason, I also put Priscilla. I can't sort of identify why, but there was something about, you know, she wants to live in a place that has a number and a name. She's been thinking about having a couple of kids. It's that, you know, sort of putting down roots. She wants to kind of give up that life. And so for me, it was kind of that notion.
I see the link now.
Yeah.
For me, Grand Canyon by Tracy Thornton came to mind. Mainly because it's a song that very much is about how people are there to love you if you let them, and accepting yourself. The amount of times I've cried to this song because it's that acknowledging who you are but coming home with that, and like, everybody loves you here is the chorus. You've come home, and oh my goodness, I love it so much. And the other one that has Mrs. Jesus, like, you're hitching a ride, you're going on a road trip. Wedding Day by Rosie Thomas came to mind, but not because someone else was involved. I think in this song, Rosie is being her own Mrs. Jesus, because it's not actually about a wedding. It's about, she's packing all the things and she's going to drive across the country, and she's going to just do all, like, she's just seizing the day, and it's going to be like her wedding day.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of that song in that, like, you can seize what you want and have it be that stereotypical most important day of your life. Like, getting married isn't necessarily the pinnacle of life's events. And she's like, I'm gonna flirt with cowboys in front of their girlfriends. Like, she says all these, stop at truck stops and chat with waitresses, and oh, I love that song. So
Listen to it on the Michael's Walk the Podcast playlist.
Yeah. All the songs that we mention, we're compiling in a playlist that accompanies this song. You can find the link to it in the podcast notes. Wherever you're listening to this, it should be there. Otherwise, it's on Spotify, and you can just search for Michael's Walk, and it should come up. Well,
that was a big one. We thought Pancake was big, but that one was massive.
Well, the next one's Taxi Ride, and we were planning on doing it after this, but it's already 10 o'clock, and I don't think I have the wherewithal to do my number one Tory song.
No, not like this. Not this.
Not like this. Not like this.
So we're going to bid you all good night.
Yes. We had a delightful day in Aspen, which you'll hear about down the line.
When we talk about carbon.
When we talk about carbon. Oh, what a day. That
Many
storm.
great adventures to come.
Yeah.
As always, you can, having heard some more of the story now, you can continue to support us. Jump on the GoFundMe. We are keeping it open at this point. It really is helping us with food and fuel to get back to LA. We've got literally, today's Monday, it's 2 weeks left in the country.
Yeah. Which
is bonkers. And the other thing that, it helps us kind of make sure that we're not in so much debt on the other side.
Yeah.
So that, any bit that you sort of chuck in
anything
is
helps.
helpful. And you can, I think on the last episode I went nuts on talking about all the ways you can support us beyond just the GoFundMe. So, but you can do that. Thank you so much for everything, everybody. It means the world to us. We share this with you.
If you're enjoying these episodes, send us messages. Like we've been getting some absolutely affirming messages about what we're doing and how people are connecting with this podcast, which is not something that I thought would actually happen. And I don't know, we started doing this just to sort of record the trip for us, but all these people are like telling us how moved they are by it.
What was funny, we had no plans to do this until I can't remember who it was at Little Book Room who like said that you
No,
had
it
to do
was
it.
Michelle in my writers group.
Yeah, it was like you have to be doing a podcast, and I'm so glad that we are.
And I'm like, I don't even listen to podcasts. How am I supposed to make one? But here we are, and I'm so glad we did too. I think it helps me organize my thoughts about this whole trip. It's chronicling it. I will be listening to this podcast myself on numerous occasions in the future as I go through the writing process.
And if at any point, you're listening to this podcast and you think, oh, I'd really like to be part of the book, I'd love, to be interviewed by Michael about music and healing, or, I'd like to jump on the podcast and share my thoughts on, we've got a few songs left, and if you're like, oh, I'd love to be interviewed, let us know. We're definitely keen to have different perspectives and to hear people's stories about these beautiful tracks. So this is an open piece of work that's happening. So any chance to share it with the people in America.
Yes.
So drop us a line. You can find Michael on socials as Little Elf Man. And you can find me. Instagram's usually best for me. Manifestress. If you just type in manifest and then RXSS, you'll find me. I'm mostly tagged in all of Michael's stuff anyway, so it's probably easy to go through his stuff. We love you all. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you.
And we'll see you in that taxi.
Taxi.
The Michael's Walk podcast acknowledges that the journey they are undertaking takes place on the sacred and unceded nations of many proud Indigenous peoples. From the lands of the Wurundjeri and the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, we are fortunate to call home, to each and every Native American tribe's land we'll set foot on as we travel. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and humbly acknowledge their sovereignty.